بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: وما أفاء الله على رسوله منهم فما أوجفتم عليه من خيل ولا ركاب ولكن الله يسلط رسله على من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير. ما أفاء الله على رسوله من أهل القرى فلله وللرسول ولذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل كي لا يكون دولة بين الأغنياء منكم. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I begin by giving you all my condolences on the martyrdom anniversary of Lady Fatima alayhi salam, Fatima al-Zahra, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, the wife of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the mother of the Imams, Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein. These days we commemorate the tragic martyrdom of this great lady according to the narration that says she passed away 90 days after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We have several narrations regarding the death of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. One narration says she passed away 40 days after the death of the Prophet. Another one says she passed away 70 or 75 days after the death of the Prophet. And the third narration says she passed away 90 days after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So this daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, all that she lived was the maximum 90 days after her father Rasulullah, 3 months after her father Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Isn't this an act of oppression? Isn't this a sign of the oppression that took place against the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where the very daughter of Rasulullah, a lady who was young, a lady who was strong, she had no problems, she wasn't ill, she wasn't sick, but she only lives for a short while after the death of her father Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam is great, not because she was the daughter of the Prophet. Today, some Muslims, they come and they say the Sahaba of Rasulullah, because they saw or they heard from the Prophet, therefore they're great. Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam is not great because she's the daughter of the Prophet. Fatima al-Zahra is great because of who she was, because of her virtues, because of her spirituality, because of her stances, because of her akhlaq, because of her sacrifice. That's why she is great. There are many lessons that we learn from the life of this great lady, but one of the most important lessons that she teaches us was the lesson that she taught us in the last days of her life. And that was to stand against the tyranny, to stand against the aggression and the oppression. The stance of social justice, this is something very important in Islam. Islam teaches me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not only expect from me praying and fasting and going to Hajj. These are things that have to do with me and my Lord. Islam is about empowering other people. Islam is about supporting others who are suffering. Islam is about giving rights to those who are in need. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. You have to stand for the haqq. You have to defend the truth. You have to defend the oppressed. And Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, this is what she did. She had a stance, even if that stance meant that her life was going to be cut short. She stood against the establishment, against the government of her time, and she spoke out against the injustice that she was witnessing. Which injustice is this? What happened? Today, Bukhari, which is considered to be the #1 book for the Muslims, for the Sunni Muslims, after the Quran. Bukhari, he says, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, she died while she was upset with the establishment. She died while she was angry with the Khalifa. Why was Fatima Zahra angry? And also, Bukhari himself, he narrates the hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that is the hadith which says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَرْضَى لِرِضَى فَاطِمَةٍ وَيَغْضَبُ لِغَضَبِهَا. Allah is satisfied by the satisfaction of Fatima, and Allah is angered by the anger of Fatima. Subhanallah. What kind of a person was she? Where God's satisfaction and anger revolves around her satisfaction and anger. This is proof that she was a ma'suma. She was an infallible, just like her father, just like her husband, just like her children, Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein, and the Imams of the Ahl Bayt. Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, she spoke out. After the death of the Prophet, she came to the masjid. She came to the masjid and she delivered a powerful sermon by the name of Al-Khutbah al-Fadakiyah, the Fadak sermon, the sermon that had to do with Fadak. And this shows us that Islam empowers women. Fatima Zahra, her whole life, she was doing what she had to do. But she didn't come out to give a sermon because there was no need, because Rasulullah was giving sermons. But when she saw that no one was speaking against the injustice of the time, she came out and she spoke. And this sermon is mentioned. The narrators, they say, لما أجمع أبو بكر على منع فاطمة فدك, when she heard that Fadak, which was a land that belonged to her, that Rasulullah gave to her several years before, she heard that Abu Bakr confiscated that land from her. وَبَلَغَهَا ذَلِكَ, and she heard about it. لَاتَتْ خِمَارَهَا عَلَى رَأْسِهَا, she took her khimar, the abaya, it's called khimar. She لَاتَتْ خِمَارَهَا عَلَى رَأْسِهَا وَاجْتَمَلَتْ بِجِلْبَابِهَا, and the jilbab is a loose garment. So the khimar is the hijab, and the jilbab is the abaya, something like this. واشتملت بجلبابها وأقبلت في لمة من حفدتها ونساء قومها, and she walked surrounded by the women of Bani Hashim and the women who were with her. أقبلت في لمة من حفدتها ونساء قومها تطأ ذيولها, her abaya was dragging on the ground, and this is a sign of her modesty, meaning her body, her body was not revealed. تطأ ذيولها ما تخرم مشيتها مشية رسول الله. Her walk was like the walk of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, حتى أقبلت على أبي بكر, until she came in front of Abu Bakr, وهو في حشد من المهاجرين والأنصار وغيرهم, and he is with the Muhajirin and the Ansar. فَنِيضَتْ دُونَهَا مُلَاءَ, they put a partition between her and the men so that she could sit and speak. فَجَلَسَتْ, then she sat down. ثُمَّ أَنَّتْ أَنَّ أَجْهَشَ الْقَوْمُ لَهَا بِالْبُكَاءِ. Once she saw the masjid of the Prophet, she saw the mihrab of Rasulullah, the member of Rasulullah, she remembered the days of her father Rasulullah. She began to cry, and the whole masjid began to cry after hearing the cries of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. And then she gave her sermon. And I recommend every single one of you, my dear brothers and sisters, to read the sermon of Fatima Zahra, or have an idea what it's about. Inshallah, tonight we will try to, with the limited time that we have, to say, why did Fatima Zahra alayhi salam deliver a sermon? The sermon, it's called Al-Khutbah al-Fadakiyah. Apparently, it's about the land of Fadak. But there was a deeper reason why Fatima Zahra alayhi salam went out and spoke. So what is Fadak? Fadak was a big piece of land, a village, that once after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, in the 5th year, I believe, after Hijrah, or 6th, after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi fought in the battle of Khaybar, there were some Jewish tribes that were living around Medina. And they were causing problems for Rasulullah. Rasulullah, remember, when he first came to Medina, he signed a pact with them that you are safe and we are safe and we don't have a problem with you. But they started harassing the Muslims. They started abusing the Muslims. Some of them. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, after he saw that they sided with the kuffar of Quraysh in the battle of Ahzab, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he went and he fought Khaybar. And he took them out of their castles that they were in. And once he did that, they gave away. Khaybar, the Muslims fought for. But there was another land by the name of Fadak, which they voluntarily gave away to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So in Surah Al-Anfal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, Surah Al-Hashr. Surah Al-Hashr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's surah number 59 in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse 6, وَمَا أَفَاءَ اللَّهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ مِنْهُمْ فَمَا أَوْجَفْتُمْ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ خَيْلٍ وَلَا رِكَابٍ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يُسَلِّطُ رُسُلَهُ عَلَى مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Allah says that this piece of land, there was some land that the Muslims fought for, and there's other land that the Muslims did not fight for. So then the Quran says, وَمَا أَفَاءَ اللَّهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْقُرَى فَلِلَّهِ وَلِلرَّسُولِ وَلِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. The land that was given to Rasulullah, not the land that the Muslims fought for. That land belongs to God and His Prophet. That land cannot be divided amongst the Muslims. The land that the Muslims fought for, they divide that amongst themselves and they take the treasure. So now the land of Fadak was given to Rasulullah and it belongs to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The land is with the Prophet. Jibreel comes to Rasulullah, tells him, وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ. Give the qurba, give the close kin, their rights. Rasulullah asks Jibreel, what do I have to do? He tells him, give Fadak to Fatima. Give the land of Fadak, the village of Fadak, give it to Fatima. Why? Because Khadija, the mother of Fatima, she gave away all of her wealth for the sake of Islam. And the day that she died, she didn't even have a kafan to be buried in. Rasulullah, he shrouded her with his own abaya, with his own cloak. So in order to compensate, to give back, Khadija, give the land of Fadak to her daughter Fatima alayhi salam, and the daughter of Rasulullah. So Rasulullah, in front of the Muslims, he gave the land of Fadak to Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. The land of Fadak was a huge land. It used to, every year, according to scholars, it used to bring about 40,000 dinars. At that time, you could buy a sheep with 1 dinar. With 1 dinar, you could buy a sheep. So it used to produce 40,000 dinars worth of dates. So it's a huge land. It's not just a small piece of land. This land was with Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. The money used to come to her. Fatima Zahra used to give the money all to the fuqara, to the needy. And the Quran talks about this. Fatima Zahra, they never collected for themselves. They used to give to others. So now, fast forward, Rasulullah dies. The Khilafah is taken from Amir al-Mu'mineen. Abu Bakr is sitting on the throne. One of his first acts, one of his first laws was confiscate Fadak from Fatima alayhi salam. Why? Because as long as Fatima Zahra has Fadak, then that means Imam Ali is going to have wealth. If Imam Ali has wealth, and Fatima Zahra has wealth, and they're in the opposition right now, they're going to be able to get people to stand and become in opposition to the government, to the establishment at that time. So immediately take away, confiscate everything that they have, their source of income. So they did that. Once they did that, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he went to the Khalifa and he tells him, how is it that you took the land of Fadak from Fatima alayhi salam? The land of Fadak belongs to Fatima. If there's a dispute, if something is in your hand Can someone come and dispute you about that? No. Because it's in your control. So he says, no, I don't have proof that it's in the control of Fatima alayhi salam. He tells him, Fatima Zahra is the daughter of the Prophet. Why would she lie? Would Imam Ali lie about such a thing? He says, listen, I don't know. I don't have proof. He tells him, no, I will witness. Ali ibn Abi Talib witnesses, Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein, and the lady who took care of Rasulullah by the name of Ayman. She's a lady that Rasulullah promised her paradise. They witnessed that Fadak was given to Fatima. He says they're all related to Fatima. I don't accept their shahada. The shahada of those individuals who are purified in the Quran was not accepted. So then, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, she says, okay, it was a gift. The first argument was, it's in my control. I have something in my hand. You can't come and ask me for something that's already in my hand. He didn't accept that. Second, she says, okay, then at least it was a gift. These were the witnesses. They reject. Third, the day the Prophet died, he only has one daughter. The only daughter was Fatima alayhi salam. Doesn't Fatima Zahra inherit from Rasulullah? The verse from the Quran says that the land that the Muslims did not fight for, فَلِلَّهِ وَلِلرَّسُولِ. So you don't agree that Rasulullah gave it away, so it's in the belonging of Rasulullah. So Rasulullah, the day he died, Fatima Zahra inherited it. She inherited it from her father Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. He says, I heard a hadith, I heard Rasulullah say, نَحْنُ مَعَاشِرَ الْأَنْبِيَاء لَا نُوَرِّثُ وَمَا تَرَكْنَاهُ صَدَقًا. I heard Rasulullah say, we the prophets, we don't leave an inheritance, and whatever we leave, this is a sadaqah. Here, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, she came out and she delivered the sermon. And in that sermon, she points out what happened with the Muslims. First of all, she begins by saying, where were you before my father came? He came and he gave you rights. You guys used to drink from the water that the animals drink from. You used to eat from the dates that you used to feed your camels. You had no respect in society. It was my father who came and gave you the respect. He came and he gave you the rights. And then, as soon as he died, you turned against his very family. You turned against the family of Rasulullah. And then he tells her, I heard Rasulullah say, نَحْنُ مَعَاشِرَ الْأَنْبِيَاء لَا نُوَرِّثُ. We the prophets, we don't leave an inheritance. Fatima Zahra, she replied, Subhanallah, مَا كَانَ أَبِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ عَنْ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ مُخَالِفًا. She says, you are claiming that my father would go against the Quran. The Quran, it says that Zakaria, he says, رَبِّ هَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا يَرِثُنِي وَيَرِثُ مِنْ آلِ يَعْقُوبَ. Zakaria says, oh Allah, grant me a child who will inherit from me. Dawood and Sulaiman inherits from Dawood. She brings 5 verses in the Quran to show that the prophets do leave an inheritance. So she tells him, how can you come and claim that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa said, we the prophets do not leave an inheritance? And subhanAllah, that hadith, it was only Abu Bakr who says, I heard it. A hadith that contradicts the Quran, and he was the only one. He was the only one. Then, several months later, they find an A'rabi, a nomad in the desert. He comes and he says, yeah, I heard Rasulullah say that as well. Ibn Abbas, the cousin of the Prophet, he says, Subhanallah, the shahada, the witness of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Fatima Zahra, Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein was not accepted, but a shahada of an A'rabi, and he says, Bawalun ala aqabayh. A'rabi, a nomad, who used to urinate on himself, they come and they tell him his shahada is accepted. This is the oppression that took place against the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Fatima Zahra spoke out. Now, some people, they come and they say, why did Fatima Zahra speak out? Of course, she spoke and they rejected her. They didn't accept her. She went to her home. She saw Amir al-Mu'mineen sitting in the home. She tells him, Ya Ali, you used to be the one who used to fight in the battles. Now you're sitting in the home. He tells her, we have a wasiyah, we have a will from Rasulullah, not to fight. If I don't have supporters, I'm not supposed to fight. And your rizq, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you, that is guaranteed for you. So, what Allah has promised for you in the akhirah is greater than what you are leaving. فَاحْتَسِبِ اللَّهِ. He tells her, leave it up to God. So she says, حَسْبِيَ اللَّهِ وَأَمْسَكَتْ. She says, حَسْبِيَ اللَّهِ. I turned this matter to God, and not ever did she speak about this issue. Today, some Muslims, they come and they say, Fatima, she came and she caused a division within the Muslims over a piece of land. Was it worth it to come and break the Muslim unity over a piece of land? First of all, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam was not going after a piece of land. The land has no meaning for the Ahlul Bayt. They are the ones who gave away everything that they had. Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, she wanted to show the world that an establishment that cannot be trusted with a piece of land, how can it be trusted with the Khilafah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? How can it be trusted with delivering the message of the Quran and the commentary on the Quran? This is what Fatima alayhi salam wanted to show. This is why many years later, during the time of Harun, during the time of Imam al-Qadhim, the 7th Imam of Ahlul Bayt, Harun, he came and he tells Imam al-Qadhim in a letter, he tells him, I want to give you back Fadak. Because each Khalifa, some of them they would come, they would keep it. Bani Umayyah, they did not give it back to the Ahlul Bayt. Harun comes, he says, I want to give it back to you. Imam al-Qadhim alayhi salam, he tells him, you want to give us back Fadak? You want me to tell you where the borders of Fadak are? The borders of Fadak are all the way from Asia to North Africa to the sea. Of course, that's not the border of Fadak. The border of Fadak is a small piece of land. But the Imam alayhi salam, he gave him the borders of the Muslim empire at that time. He tells him Fadak symbolizes the Khilafah after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Fadak symbolizes the land that was taken away from Fatima, and it also symbolizes the Khilafah that was taken away from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt. Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, she went home and she lived the remaining days and weeks of her life broken, sad. Her own right was taken away from her. Her father, Rasulullah, came and gave rights to individuals, gave rights to women, to children, to people, to the minorities. But the Muslims, they turned against Fatima alayhi salam. And Rasulullah, when he died, he asked one thing of the Muslims. He tells them, بَلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. Say, I don't ask for anything except loving my qurba. But the Ummah, the Muslims, they treated the family of Rasulullah as if the Prophet says, I want you to oppress them after me. I want you to turn against them. I want you to shun them. Rasulullah, he used to stand in front of the door of Fatima Zahra. And the door of Fatima was attached to the masjid of Rasulullah. So Rasulullah, where he's standing in his mihrab, in the mambar, he could see the door of Fatima. And the door of Fatima was open. The door of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima Zahra and the door of the house of Rasulullah was open to the masjid. All of the other Muslims, when Rasulullah first built the masjid, they also had their houses surrounding the masjid and their doors were open directly to the masjid. Rasulullah ordered all of those doors to be closed and they have to go around and enter through the main door of the masjid. But Rasulullah and Imam Ali and Fatima Zahra, if they enter into the masjid, they just enter from the door directly onto the masjid. What does that mean? That means that they're pure. That means that they're tahir. Because masjid, only the pure ones enter into the masjid. Rasulullah shut the doors of everyone. Even Abbas, his uncle, he shut his door. And his uncle was upset about that. But Rasulullah tells him this is the order of God. He kept the door of Imam Ali and Fatima. And he used to go and stand in front of that door. And he used to say, Assalamu alaikum ya ahla bayt al-nubuwah wa ma'dan al-rasalah wa mukhtalaf al-malaikah wa mahbat al-wahi. أتأذنون لي بالدخول? Do you give me permission to enter? Fatima alayhi salam, she would say, Ya Rasulullah, this is your house. You don't need to seek permission to enter. He used to stand in front of the door and he used to say, Babu Fatima babi wa hijabuha hijabi. The door of Fatima is my door. And the hijab of Fatima, meaning the partition, is my partition. Meaning if you transgress against the hijab of Fatima, you're going against me. Rasulullah did this in front of all of the Muslims. Then, the day of Saqifah, Rasulullah has just been buried. They come and they attack that very door of Fatima alayhi salam. And she sustained the injuries as a result of what happened. And she lived only a few days after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, until the last day of her life. She tells Asma, she tells her, Oh Asma, I have prepared food for my children. When they come, give them the food. I'm going to be in my room reciting the Quran. Asma says, I heard Fatima alayhi salam, she goes in the room and she begins to recite the Quran. Then a while later, her voice stopped. I go in the room, I call her, Ya bint Rasulullah, O daughter of Rasulullah, but there was no answer. I keep calling her, Ya Fatima, there's no reply. Then Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein, they enter. She says, I go to them and I tell them, your mother has prepared food for you. Go and eat the food. They say, Oh Asma, when have you seen us eat without our mother Fatima? They felt something bad has happened. They go in the house, they go in the room. They see their mother laying there. They throw themselves on the body of Fatima. Imam al-Hassan, he calls her, Ummah, kallimini fa'ana waladuki al-Hassan. Oh mother, speak to me, I am your son Hassan. Imam al-Hussein, he tells her, Ummah, kallimini, ana habibuki al-Hussein. I am your son, I am your beloved Hussein. Asma, she tells them, O sons of Rasulullah, go and inform your father that your mother has passed away. They run into their father. The Muslims, they see them, they say, what has happened? O children of Rasulullah. They say, أَوَلَيْسْ قَدْ مَاتَتْ أُمُّنَا فَاطِمَةٌ. Our mother Fatima has passed away. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he begins to run to the house. He begins to cry, Wa Fatimata, Wa Fatimata. That night, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he tells the Muslims, go to your homes. The funeral of Fatima has been delayed. She has asked that no one participates from those who oppressed her. No one participates in her funeral. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he tells them to go. That night, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he got up to wash the body of Fatima in the middle of the night. Asma says, as I was pouring the water and Ali ibn Abi Talib was washing the body of Fatima, suddenly I saw him go to the corner of the room and he begins to cry very loudly. I tell him, Oh Abul Hassan, we learned patience from you. Why is it that you are crying so loud? He tells her, Ya Asma, لقد رأيت ضلعا من أضلاعها مكسورا. Oh Asma, I saw that one of her ribs was broken. This was something that she did not inform me. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا Allah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the ziyarah and the shafa'ah of Lady Fatima. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات نهدي ثواب الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على